Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the State of Hoops podcast. This is your co-host, Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host, Nate Malchow. Chow, how are you doing today?
We're at the end of March. Little tired, Schleck, to be honest with you, with all the tournaments going on and just a lot of watching hoops on TV. It's such a great time of the year, I never say I'm ready for basketball to be done, because watching all the time, and even when we get into the pro seasons and the playoffs here in the spring. But what a great couple weeks and celebration of what we do here in South Dakota.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do on today's episode, Nate, is kind of do a roundball review, specifically of the state boys basketball tournaments and how they fared. I had the opportunity to be out in Rapid City, and we'll talk about that on today's episode and talk about all three classes. But before we do, did you fill out an NCAA tournament bracket this year?
I did. Was in a bracket pool with family, and unfortunately my pick got beat in the Sweet 16. So I had Michigan State pegged, thought they might make a run, as Izzo usually does, but I'm pretty much done at this point with my bracket. Still have a couple that might reach the Final Four, but how about you?
Yeah, I am not faring well. I took Arkansas to the Final Four, and the 1 year Arizona actually lives up to expectations. They burned me this year in my bracket.
Well, it's fun to see some of these old names that getting back into the NCAA tournament. Arizona has not been to a Final Four since 2001. And of course, we grew up in the 90s when that was a regular spot for the Wildcats, Lute Olson days and everything when they were getting back. But college basketball is better when you have a team like Arizona back in the mix, a little West Coast flair there, but it's just fun to watch. And it's fun to watch the coaches. It's fun to watch the end of game stuff that they're running. Shout out to the Iowa Hawkeyes, their run this year too. And Ben McCollum in his first year and pulling off some upsets to get to the Elite Eight. But that was one team that I was really closely following, and always been a fan of McCollum's coaching and his strategies, and that was on full display at the dance.
Yeah, and you and I have both admired McCollum ever since following him when he was at Division II, Northwest Missouri State, winning national championships, winning one or two of them when the D2 Elite Eight, Nate, was at the Pentagon, and had some epic battles with Augustana and Northern State when he was at Northwest Missouri State. So it's fun to see coaches like that. And you would know, Chow, I mean, coaches can coach. It doesn't matter the level. And I think he's proved he's a top 5 coach in America.
No question. I mean, some of the best coaches that I have been around have been at the high school level. They've been at the small college level, and then they get to take that to a higher level. I mean, look at Kalen DeBoer and Josh Heupel, and McCollum's a regional guy, but all of these guys who have taken that coaching at the highest level. Winning's winning, coaching's coaching, regardless of the level that you're at.
Yeah, well said. And that's a good segue for us to dive into the state boys tournaments, do a review. And before we do that, Nate, I want to talk a little bit about the combined AA and A tournament in Rapid City. I had an opportunity to be out there, and it was fun. There was so much buzz, saw so many basketball people throughout the three-day tournaments. First of all, I really appreciate everyone who commented on the podcast in Rapid City. Heard a lot of positive feedback and heard a lot of comments to make sure I tell Chow hi since he wasn't out there. And really fun environment with both the AA and A out there. The Doubletree and Tally Silver Spoon were places to be throughout the 3 days, as we kind of talked about earlier. But I thought it was cool. The ice arena, first of all, Nate, I liked the smaller venue. I thought that provided an atmosphere that maybe we don't always see, even for the boys tournaments, and the big, more cavernous arenas, the Monument or the Denny. And they had the student sections real close to the floor on the ends. Environment was really good in there. I thought it was a good venue. The only thing that we kept noticing throughout is there was an unusual amount of players slipping on one end of the floor, and a lot of speculation was the sheet of ice is under the floor. And I wonder if that had something to do with that, but it was interesting. We observed that. A lot of people commented on that, but overall, very good venue to play in. They're going to have another combined one here in a couple of years. It's my understanding, Nate, that there's another conflict at the Denny. And so my wish list would be, if they do it again, and it sounds like it's going to happen again at some point, to stagger the start times of the games, especially on quarterfinal Thursday, so that fans can see parts of both games if they want to. And then you could structure the Friday and Saturday portions of the tournaments where the semifinal Friday could be standalone games. You could do the consolation rounds, get creative with scheduling those earlier, and then everyone could segue to the big monument arena for the semifinal round. And you could do the same thing, championship Saturday night as well. But overall, just a great job by Rapid City and the South Dakota High School Activities Association hosting the event. And those were my takeaways from the overall combined experience, having two classes out in one city and in one complex, Nate.
Yeah, you have a tournament of that magnitude where you have a combined state tournament with the boys. There'll be reflection after the tournament. There'll be suggestions that I know the state and the ADs will look at, and looking forward to hearing that feedback. Overall, though, sounded like a great environment. Again, I can't speak to it because I was not out there. I was out there the weekend before for 5 or 6 days with the weather with the girls tournament, but that was a standalone AA tournament that was out there. But looking forward to hearing some of the reactions from the fans and the positives. And then, are there things that we can always tweak to make things better? Absolutely. And I know the state will take that into consideration before they have another event similar to this.
And I know you have a spring activities director conference every year. Is that something that you guys, I think our listeners and viewers would be interested in hearing? You get reports on that as an AD on state events and the feedback? Are there surveys of the schools? How do you get, what's that look like reports from state events back to the ADs when you have these conferences?
Yeah, the ADs have our state conference this week up in Deadwood, South Dakota, where all the state ADs meet together. There'll be some talk a little bit about the tournaments and some feedback. Most of those Schleck, are saved for when the board of directors meets in Pierre. I think it's a couple times a year where they have a report from whichever member of the South Dakota High School Activities Association Executive Board ran that tournament. That's where they'll get the reports, but the ADs certainly will talk about it this week. Really, at our AD conference, it's a lot of meetings. It's a great time for the ADs to have professional development. Yes, we are students of the administration world still, and we take classes out there. And then we also vote on athletic proposals and fine arts proposals now as well, that are brought from the various advisory committees. That's voted on by the ADs. I think sometimes people get the assumption that when the ADs vote on it, everything is final. Well, that's not the case. In South Dakota, anything that comes through for a suggestion for change starts at the advisory committee, then it gets voted on by the ADs, and then if it passes the ADs, it will move on to the board of directors at their April meeting. So there is a little semblance of structure for proposals and for changes and revisions of rules.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I think it's interesting for our viewers and listeners to hear what comes at you as an activities director, athletic director at a large school. And I knew you were heading out here soon for the spring ADs conference. So thanks for sharing that, Nate. Well, let's do a recap of the state Class AA boys tourney. There were some very competitive games. I had the opportunity to call 4 of the games as a color analyst, Nate, for Midwest Sports Plus. That was fun. I did all 3 of the Roosevelt games, and then I did the state championship game between Lincoln and Huron. But I guess let's start at the top. From a coaching perspective, when you watched what you observed, how did Huron prevail from that crowded field? We talked on our preview episode how competitive it was going to be. What did you see from Huron that made them win 3 games in 3 days and avenge earlier season losses to both Roosevelt and undefeated Lincoln in the state championship?
Well, there's no secret about it. You have to be playing your best basketball of the year at tournament time, and you got to string together 3 days. Huron did that, and it started out against O'Gorman, who I thought was as hot of a team and playing as well as any team in AA's, and they came out and they took care of business in that game. Beat a very talented Roosevelt team, and then obviously the Lincoln game at the end. But a couple things that stood out to me is that Huron was very good on the defensive end. It's not that they were that they were trying to force turnovers and trying to do anything flashy. But I really thought that with their size, they were able to handle some of the guard play and the penetration from the other teams and kind of give themselves a step back where they could kind of fan the penetration, but still have a hand up to contest. Biggest key in that Lincoln game to me was Lincoln would get a look, they'd get a shot, but Lincoln didn't get many second chance opportunities. It was one shot and out. And Huron really controlled the boards in that game. I thought they controlled it throughout the tournament. Very intentional about getting post touches. If you look back at our first episode of the year, we talked a little bit about that with Huron's height and what they could do. And we talked about how getting the ball in the lane would be a key to their success. And they did that all weekend long. And I know Coach Budenhagen really made an emphasis to that. But right from the game, bam, that ball was going in the post. It was going in the lane. And Huron came out and made a statement and said, that's where the ball's going to be. Stop us. And they really did a nice job of that, and they played hard. So congratulations to them, and congratulations to Sioux Falls Lincoln as well too. It's been a great run for the Pats the last couple of years, and they just ran into a team that was playing its best basketball of the year. And shout out to Blake Ellen for stepping up. And when you get into state tournament situations, your first team All-Staters got to play like first team All-Staters. And I thought Blake did that all weekend long. And where I was impressed is that he was getting to the line, man, and he was hitting free throws, and that shows that he's making an effort to be physical, to be aggressive, and to get to the foul line and really cash in from there.
Yeah, and some of the commentary I provided on Midwest Sports Plus when I did the Huron Roosevelt game and then the Huron Lincoln game, Chow, were some of what you said. I mean, first of all, that Roosevelt game was such a rock fight that Huron just kind of played bully ball. They got to the line, they adjusted, and they made their free throws. As a team, they were amazing all weekend shooting free throws, and they dictated the physicality of the games. And what was amazing is also, to me, one of the other storylines for Huron, they got contributions from role players at big moments. You know, if you'd have told me, and I told this to Jay Elwine, who's an assistant coach, a great player in Huron lore, Blake and Miles' dad, I told him, Jay, if you would have told me that Davis Chase, who's a fantastic player, would have been held down scoring wise against Roosevelt and Lincoln, I would have said Huron isn't going to win that game. Got amazing contributions, including Miles Elwine hitting just timely shots in both the semifinal and finals. And again, Coach Budenhagen, they were pretty open, even in their media interviews, that they changed their defensive philosophy after they played Lincoln during the regular season and lost that game by 27 points. And they changed it. They made teams kind of beat you by going over the top. You were going to have to go over the top. You were going to have to knock down perimeter shots at a very high level. And they used their size, in my mind, just very smart. And then I agree with you. They cleaned up the defensive glass all weekend. They used that size. And if you were not hitting from the perimeter, you weren't getting second chances. And that's really impressive because when teams were taking all those perimeter shots, a lot of times that leads to long rebounds and second chance points. But Huron took care of business all weekend long on the defensive glass. Knowing you, Chow, that's the type of basketball that you appreciate and that you coached, and you can appreciate that.
It's winning basketball. At the end of the season, you have to dominate the paint. This is not the NBA, guys, where, you know, the NBA game sometimes with the analytics and some of those things influence even the younger levels. But at the high school level, it's still basic about getting the ball in the lane and being able to keep people out of the lane and get the ball in the lane offensively. But Schleck, I think you hit the nail on the head there too. Lincoln had a great year. Coach Hanneman did a great job with those guys, and they set the bar all season long for what needed to happen, basically to knock them off. And I think as you get throughout a season and during a season, coaches make adjustments throughout the season, and I think the adjustments were, what can we do to have a chance against Sioux Falls Lincoln? And again, Lincoln had a great year. They took a lot of people's best shots, and they won some games in the regular season that were very tight. It's not easy to win state tournaments. you got to be playing your best, and you have to get contributions from a lot of people, and that's not to rain on anybody during the tournament. I think Lincoln and Coach Hanneman, they can be very proud of their season and what they accomplished this year and everything too. Like I said, Huron just had a great weekend, and they had a heck of a state tournament and really, really controlled the lane on all three opponents for the entire weekend.
Yeah, and I would echo what you said about Lincoln. Coach Hanneman's done just a fantastic job. He brought energy immediately when he took that job to the program, and just in 2 years, really set that bar high, and it'll be really fun to follow Sam DeGroat and Sam Erickson as they head to Augustana next year, and Blake Elwine as he moves on to South Dakota State. Both those programs will be very good again next year. Lincoln's going to have the table setter Brody Schaefer back, and Huron's got a lot of their other players back. A couple other quick storylines. First of all, I do want to give a shout out to Dave Elwine. That would be Blake and Miles' grandpa, Jay's dad. Dave had some good visits with Dave last weekend, but he is a basketball historian in his own right, seen a lot of great basketball, and he was very proud. And so really enjoyed my conversations with Dave as well. And I know he listens to this podcast. Also had a very fun visit on Saturday afternoon with Derek Roby. I did, and it was after their last game. Really enjoyed kind of reminiscing for a few minutes with Coach Roby. He was at Aberdeen Roncalli when I was at Mobridge for part of my career. So my dad coached against him. And so one of the storylines I wrote down is we saw the last games coached by Derek Roby, Pat McClemens. I know you have great relationships with both of those coaches. Who made an impact on your career?
Both of them are two of the best to ever do it in the state of South Dakota. I was just so happy to have been around. Coach Roby, Coach McClemens, probably more proud to call them friends. Coach Roby was a mentor for me when I was growing up. He wasn't my high school coach, but he was the girls basketball coach at Aberdeen Central when I was going through, and we always loved having Coach Roby as a teacher in class and all that. And through the years, that has evolved to him becoming a friend and everything too. And Coach McClemens, obviously, all the battles that we had coaching the girls against each other through all those years, and developed a friendship and a respect. And again, South Dakota saw the last games for two of the best to ever do it, and the impression that they have made on basketball in our community, and a lot of respect and a lot of thank yous to those two for being great mentors and being great coaches.
Yeah, and if you look at the AA coaches who were in the state tournament, we also had an announcement by Roosevelt coach Mitch Begeman, and that was a little more maybe unexpected. But after 10 years, he's stepping down. He is going to take a job in the private sector, and with young kids, you hear often coaching is, and Nate, from your background, it's a 12-month ordeal, and but Mitch certainly elevated Roosevelt's program and developed a culture there that he can be very proud of, including winning 2 state championships, 1 undefeated season. And so just hats off to Coach Begeman. Wanted to mention that because I have a personal tie to that program, obviously.
Well, I think where Mitch started at Roosevelt, I think there's a year where he didn't win a game there. And then to go undefeated and to win 2 state championships, sometimes to appreciate the highest of highs, you have to start in a place where you're really building. And Mitch did a great job with that program. Kids always played hard and had a great run. And yeah, that news came out this week and maybe was a surprise to many in the basketball community, but congratulations to Mitch on his career there, and best of luck to what he's getting into now in the private sector.
Well, we're going to transition now to 2 sponsor ads. Park Bench Apparel. Looking for high quality custom gear? Look no further than Park Bench Apparel, your South Dakota owned print shop. Park Bench Apparel specializes in screen printing, embroidery, laser and UV printing, plus unique giftware for every occasion. Outfitting your company or team, they have got you covered with fully customizable team stores and corporate apparel. Find Park Bench Apparel at SDHSAA events and follow the action on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Park Bench Apparel, wear an adventure.
And if you're looking for financial guidance close to home, visit Charles Schwab's Sioux Falls, South Dakota branch, your local investment firm. Led by Lonnie Struckman and Zach Hansen, financial consultants with over 25 years of combined experience, their team is here to help you reach your financial goals. Whether you're planning, investing, or just have questions, Lonnie, Zach, and their team put clients first every time. Call 605-231-4844 or search Schwab Sioux Falls at schwab.com to book your appointment today. Charles Schwab, own your tomorrow.
Well, let's talk now about the Class A boys state tourney and do a little bit of recap, Nate. Now, full disclosure, even though I was in Rapid City, because the games weren't staggered, I wasn't able to see many of those games. I did go to part of the Groton-Hamlin quarterfinal game, which was a fantastic game. Those were two very evenly matched teams. And then I did see one of the consolation games between Stanley County and Cheyenne Eagle Butte. But obviously, one of the big storylines was Dave Hollenbeck's first year at West Central, and could they finish the job and remain undefeated? And they ended up prevailing over Sioux Falls Christian in the state championship in a game that I don't think was a surprise to anyone that those two programs met for the state championship. But what were your takeaways on that game and Hollenbeck and what he did in his first year at West Central?
I've talked to several people and, read a couple articles that the media has come out, talking about Coach Hollenbeck coming in, setting the tone with attitude, defense, just working on getting that group together and then having a great year in a short amount of time. So hats off to West Central. They ran the table. Tough schedule in that conference, tough opponents, and they came out and they got it done in the state tournament, played really well in that state championship game. And, like you said, probably no surprise that the two teams, West Central and Sioux Falls Christian, were in that final and battling again. I know they had a battle earlier this year in the regular season, but again, just a great run for the Trojans. A little reminiscent of the Kent Mueller days and Josh Mueller days when they were winning titles there. So proud basketball history, and they were able to get it done again this year.
Yeah, someone asked me out there in Rapid City to handicap that game before the game, and I said I'm not a betting man. My thoughts were West Central was better defensively. Sioux Falls Christian may be a little bit better offensively. I know that West Central, and I heard a radio interview by Coach Hollenbeck, they talked about building a wall defensively, especially getting back defensively in transition. Sioux Falls Christian does just an amazing job pushing the tempo, pushing the ball. And so they got back in transition defensively, and they kind of built this wall to get ready for Brant Wasner and his penetration and everything he can do. And sounds like they did that successfully in that game. And it's no surprise, when Coach Hollenbeck was at St. Thomas More, defense was their hallmark. And there was talent returning at West Central. They made it to the State A tournament last year. But I think any casual observer of South Dakota basketball, if you saw West Central play at all, would notice instantly that they were a much better and connected defensive team this year with Coach Hollenbeck manning the sidelines.
Yeah, and that's been Coach Hollenbeck's trademark through the years. Always solid on the defensive end and controlling what you can control and being on the glass. We know that firsthand. We had a great rivalry with them at Washington High School. We were probably one of the few AA schools, and probably, I may be wrong on this, but the first one that actually played St. Thomas More on a regular basis. We double-headered games with the boys and the girls when all four programs were really strong. And, a lot of props to Coach Hollenbeck and Coach Candlin and Craig Nowotny for putting all that together, but had a front row seat to see how those teams operated, and you saw a lot of similarities with West Central this year.
Yeah, and one of my other storylines, the crowds were very good in the Monument. I had a chance to, like I mentioned earlier, I went to some of the consolation games, and you think Sunshine Bracket, there's not going to be anyone there. Well, St. Thomas More was playing in those afternoon sessions, Friday and Saturday. Stanley County, Cheyenne Eagle Butte, Groton, they all had really good crowds. really good for an afternoon Friday and Saturday consolation round sessions. I was very impressed with the crowds over there at the Monument for the State A tournament. And the other storyline was there was an instant classic. That game between Groton and St. Thomas More, Nate, was one of the more wild games. We often see that in the consolation rounds. The pressure's off and you see some amazing games. I remember one year my dad coached Mobridge. I think it was 2004 in the State A tournament. The afternoon they played Elk Point Jefferson on the Friday afternoon in a sunshine bracket game, and it was a triple overtime thriller. And that's kind of what this Groton St. Thomas More game became. It was a double overtime game. Had shots at the buzzer, had all kinds of drama, and there was a lot of buzz about that game on Friday between sessions about how great of a game it was.
Yeah, it looked like some high scoring games in the sunshine bracket out there, and some big shots that were hit and provided some exciting moments.
Yep. Well, let's talk about the State B now, Nate, briefly. Of course, Aberdeen was the host of the State B again, and I think one of the big storylines was some of the upsets that took place. I mean, you had Lyman as the eight seed beating Viborg Hurley, the 1 seed. You had Wall beating DeSmit that first day. And so we kind of thought that there was a lot of parity on the seed lines going into that tournament, but certainly made for an interesting State B tournament when you saw all the upsets taking place throughout the tournament. And of course, Freeman, one of the big storylines, they won their first title since 1975. And congratulations to the Flyers. I can remember in the 80s, Mobridge played them in several State A tournaments when they were Class A. Ron Baker was their coach. That's a name that rings a bell to some of the South Dakota basketball fans, but they have a proud tradition. I saw Freeman play quite a bit last summer in the Impact Summer League in Sioux Falls. They would drive over every Monday night, play a lot of the Sioux Falls schools, and you could tell they had the makings of a very special team, and that's what it takes. You see a lot of these teams who got to play here in late March, Class AA, A, or B, they made those runs on the backs of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears last summer.
Yeah, that's where the work gets put in. I think we all know that basketball's a year-round sport, and if you're not doing anything in the summer, in the off season, you're not getting better and putting that together. So, shout out to Freeman. Coach Friesen's been doing it for a while. Another one of those communities where, Freeman is always in all of their sports have produced some great teams and athletes throughout the years in boys and girls, and what a thrill for the community to go up there and get a state championship. So congrats to the Flyers.
And I think the Flyers may not be done yet. They have some really good young talent. David Walter was only a sophomore. He's a player that even we coached against, Nate, when our kids were really young. Freeman would come to Sioux Falls, and so he's fun to watch, a great athlete. And of course, Freeman also won the football championship this fall. So, a school like that has athletes when they can pull the double like that. But again, congrats to the Flyers. And once again, the State B delivered a lot of drama and a lot of cinema up there like they always do. And congrats to all the participants in the State B. Let's transition to a few more sponsor ads at this time. Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors. For over 30 years, Pat and Pam Tiefenthaler of Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors have been trusted names in and around the Sioux Falls community. Building relationships that last, they're humbled and honored to serve buyers and sellers with care and expertise. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or navigating a move because life happens, Pat and Pam will walk beside you, guiding you every step of the way. Call Pat or Pam at Tiefenthaler Homes with Hague Realtors today, your trusted partners in Sioux Falls. Visit tiefteam.hague.com or call 605-321-0550.
And if you love South Dakota hoops, discover the legacy at the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving our state's rich basketball history for generations to come. Visit their incredible exhibits at Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls and explore stories, milestones, and legends online at www.sdbbhof.com. From iconic players and coaches to unforgettable teams, this is South Dakota basketball.
I also want to take a moment to thank the team at Insight. They're the folks who helped us with the visual assets to bring this podcast to life. And I can tell you, they don't just make things look good. They dive in, ask the right questions, and come back with great ideas that actually work. Whether it's branding, campaigns, or creative strategy, Insight has a way of helping businesses stand out and connect with people in meaningful ways. If you're looking for a partner to make an impact on your business, check them out at insightmarketingdesign.com.
Bleacher Preachers!
It's time to bring back the popular Bleacher Preachers segment, Nate. And we have a simple question for our viewers and listeners on this episode of State of Hoops. We want you to weigh in either by direct messages on Instagram or X, or by sending us an email at stateofhoopspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know, between the girls' state tournaments and boys' state tournaments, what was the biggest upset that took place. And it could be Huron over Lincoln boys in the AA. It could be Lennox over Maipialuta girls in Class A. Corsica Stickney versus Lyman in girls. Harding County versus Bennett County girls. Lyman versus Viber Hurley boys. Wall versus DeSmit boys. Tell us what you think is the biggest upset that took place in either a girls' state tournament or a boys' state tournament this March. And again, we encourage you to interact with the podcast. Send us DMs on X, Instagram, and you can always email us at stateofhoopspodcast@gmail.com.
Shout out.
And it's time for our popular shout out segment. Nate, I'm going to give a shout out to the 6 programs who walked away with state championships, both on the girls' side and boys' side this March. You have Ethan, Lennox, and O'Gorman on the girls' side, and Freeman, West Central, and Huron on the boys' side. Congratulations to the players, the coaching staffs, the programs in general, and in their communities, their school communities, and their communities at large. It's a source of pride, and I wanted to provide a forum on our shout out segment to give a shout out to the state champions in South Dakota in 2026.
What a memory. And agree with you, Schleck. Shout out to all those schools and the coaches, the players, the team managers, the cheerleaders, the communities. I mean, there's a lot of people that get behind these teams and will them to having success, and they've created a memory for a lifetime. The bond that you have with teammates, and it doesn't mean that you're winning championships all the time, but when you have a championship team, you've etched your mark in your history at your school and the history in this state of South Dakota basketball.
And that wraps up another episode of the State of Hoops podcast. Just a programming note for our viewers and listeners. Now that we've transitioned into April and the basketball season is behind us, we're going to transition back to having 2 episodes a month. So we're going to have a year-round podcast, but the shoulder months of April through November, we will have 2 episodes a month, and we will release those on the first Wednesday and the third Wednesday of every month. So just wanted to give that programming note. During the basketball season months of December through March, we'll go weekly episodes like we did this season. And now we're transitioning to 2 episodes a month, first and third Wednesdays. Just a little teaser, Nate, and I want you to have the last word on this. We're excited about our next Legends Series episode with the one and only Josh Mueller. What's your first reaction on that?
We're gonna have a great visit with Josh in an upcoming episode. Able to connect with him in the last week to make sure that that we're getting this set up. What a legacy as a player, at the high school level and the college level, but as a competitor. So many people, I mean, that's a name that's synonymous as one of the all-time greats in our state, hands down. So we're looking forward to talking to Josh, reliving some of those memories, including the state tournament total, which I think is a record that will never be broken. So we will get into detail on that, and we look forward to seeing Josh on an upcoming episode. And Schleck, we're also going to, in the off season, we're going to feature these Legends episodes and just get to know some of our basketball luminaries in the state, but we're also going to feature the great games that have been played in this state and relive some of those. So even though it's not the season and the content isn't in season with the tournaments and with the polls and all of that, we got a story to tell on this podcast with the history of basketball, and we'll continue to do that. And thank you to our listenership who's out there. Just so many positive comments, and whether it's talking to us or talking to our families or reaching out, and continue to do that. Again, it comes down to the basis of this podcast is relationships and how basketball has created friendships and relationships in this state through the years, and just something that the people really get behind and support. And it will always be that way. So thank you to the basketball community for supporting the podcast, and we'll do our best to keep up the good content and getting that out for our listeners.
And that's a great way to wrap up the episode, Nate. I appreciate you hanging in there with me. And just remind again, all of our viewers and listeners, please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, and Amazon Music, and follow us on social media on X, Instagram, and YouTube. Until next time, yours in hoops, co-host Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host Nate Malchow. Have a great day.